It's you and me, brother. And then, we have producers on the East Coast who engineer the whole thing and make a really cool presentation out of it. And I take it you haven't caught one of these No Idea Zone podcasts yet.
No, I haven't checked it out yet.
Okay, well, you'll have reason to finally do, because you're in one. So you'll finally have a reason to watch one.
Definitely. So, like, have you interviewed a lot of cool comics then?
Yeah, man. I interviewed Sam Tripoli. I interviewed Rick Overton. This is the company you're in here. I interviewed John Piricello from Twin Peaks. I interviewed, who else did I have on? Corey Mosley, who wrote for Cat Williams, who actually introduced me to Cat Williams. Let's see, who else have I had on? We're going to have on Michael Williams, who is the proprietor of the first black comedy club ever in Los Angeles. So he's coming up. He's coming up. So this is the company you're in, the guy who discovered Robin Harris. Lori Buckley is going to be on, who is the daughter of Lord Buckley. He's the early, I don't know if you've heard of Lord Buckley, but he was kind of like you. He was a maverick, a bizarre comic, and he sort of at the beginning of comedy, before it was even a thing, American comedy was sort of like a street art still, It hadn't really gotten organized. There weren't comedy clubs at all in the Depression, and this guy, he would perform for Al Capone. Anyway, I'm going to have his daughter on, and she's going to tell stories about that. And so this is the company you're in here.
Oh, that's interesting.
But the reason I wanted to have you on was because, well, obviously, between you and I, you have some remarkable things have happened to you. And I kind of want, a couple hundred people are going to watch this, but a couple of hundred people will probably be very moved by your story of miracle, basically, that you're like a walking miracle. So I want to start this off by saying we knew each other through the comedy circuit, and kind of I was kind of a pitiful veteran hanging out at open mics, and that was kind of how we met, at these open mics. And we were kind of comics who would look for friendly open mics to go to, right? I mean, I'm not mistaken in saying that. Open mics that weren't sort of vicious. And we met through some other comic friends who were putting on shows like that, sort of pro-amateur shows. I think Chris Sanders introduced you and I, our mutual friend.
I remember seeing you at the Fanatic Salon.
Was that where we met, at the Fanatic Salon?
I remember seeing you perform there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, which was a pretty fun, right? It was a pretty fun place to perform at, give or take. That wasn't so bad. But okay, so you had seen me, but we maybe hadn't met yet.
Yeah, I'd seen you there, and then I remember seeing you at was it Unurban Coffee on Pico? I think I might have seen you there, and then I remember seeing you at the Jewish temple that you went to.
Okay, but we also did, before we get to that, we also did shows. I feel like we did shows at the Solar Cahuenga place in Hollywood. Did we not do comedy there, or am I mistaken that you were not there?
I don't remember if I was at Solar Cahuenga.
Okay, so Fanatic Salon, and I do remember Unurban. I'll tell you how my memory of that is that you do a very clever joke about race. Maybe one of the funniest, smartest jokes about race I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And it is a compliment to say when you remember a comic's joke. That's a huge thing. I don't remember comics jokes unless they're really good. So that there was like a glimmer of, wow, this guy's very smart and funny and interesting. Wow, I didn't see that one coming. So I want to remind you of that. I have that memory. So that was at Unurban. I heard that you do that. And then I saw you at the synagogue. So this is what happened. I've been going to the synagogue for a couple of years. It's in your neighborhood, basically, your former neighborhood, right?
Yeah, that's where I was born and raised.
Okay, so it was in your neighborhood. But when I saw you at the synagogue, I was like, oh, the guy the guy in that wheelchair looks like Terrence Rutledge, the comic. But he's not Terrence Rutledge because Terrence Rutledge is not in a wheelchair. I remember having this actual thought. And then as I got closer to you, I went, holy shit, that's Terrence Rutledge. He's in a wheelchair. And I remember giving you a big hug. It was Shabbat, and it was this joyous time. And I remember giving you this big hug, and I think we exchanged phone numbers, or I said, stay in touch with me. And you can go now and please explain to the No Idea Zone audience what had happened to you.
Yeah, man. So much happened to me. Where do I begin? I was a comedian. I was standing. I was walking. I'm from LA, and I was so excited to be here in LA. I remember when I first got into comedy, if we're going to go back to the comedy genesis, it was back in Utah and BYU, because my dream before comedy was to be an animator. I wanted to make cartoons for Pixar. And I had an animation professor who said, draw, 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 draw until you die. Now, I'm a very extreme kind of person. I take things very seriously and literally sometimes, to my own detriment. So I was drawing day and night for 3 days and 3 nights until my hands were frozen blocks of solid ice and they would not move. And I took them to the doctors, and the doctors said, yeah, you really messed up your hands, man. I don't think they're going to move for a very long time. And then I realized I cannot be an artist anymore. I must move on. And so I had to just stop doing art. But then I remembered, like, aside from art, I've always really liked performing. I've really enjoyed getting up in front of people. And I remember thinking, what about comedy? Because I saw my roommates were watching Gabriel Iglesias in the living room, and they were laughing so much. And I remember seeing like this big, like Mexican Hawaiian looking guy. And I was thinking like, oh my gosh, like he's on stage in front of thousands of people and that's his job. What if I did that? That's such a crazy idea. I mean, I've never thought of an idea like that before, but what if I did that? And then I told my roommates, yeah, I think I want to do it. I want to do what Fluffy does. And they're like, huh, but like, how are you going to do that? You've never made us laugh. Like, you've never said anything funny. And I remember I didn't know how to get started in comedy. So I thought you just had to be funny in random places. So I would just like, if I saw a microphone, I would just get up and like, just try to say something funny. So like, I remember at church, I interrupted church while everybody's talking about God, and I just tried to tell jokes.
Oh man.
And then like, I remember when there was a food court, I saw a microphone was just in the food court at college, and I just interrupted all the 1,000 people eating food in the food court at lunch and just tried to tell jokes. And somebody came to me and was like, hey, Terrence, I've been noticing that you've been like interrupting church and interrupting the food court. Did you know that there are places called comedy clubs where you can actually—
Wait a minute, the same person in church and food court was at the food court? Some of those people were also at church and the food court?
Yeah, because I went to a church right across the street from the food court.
Oh, you were tormenting people like you weren't even rotating the people you were tormenting. They were the same people.
Yeah, there was a lot of overlap for sure. And the guy was like, did you know that there are venues for comedy? Like, you don't just have to torture random
Did you really not know that?
I really did not know that. I did not know that comedy clubs existed. I did not know that open mics existed. I had no idea how you were to get into comedy. I had no idea. I thought like, oh.
It must have been a incredible disappointment for you when you finally discovered what those fucking places were really like.
Oh, open mics? Miserable places. Awful places.
Miserable.
Where it's just you and like 2 people in a bar. And they're like, whatever, I don't care.
You know what, Terrence? It's gotten worse. There was a time where there weren't that many comedians and open mics were bad. I'm not saying they weren't bad, but there were fewer of them. There were fewer comedians. So it wasn't like as nutso as it got in the past 7 or 8 or 10 years where it's like 70 people, 65 of whom aren't funny in the first place. And I don't know what they saw, and I shouldn't be too critical because some of those people who aren't funny could end up being like superstar. You never know. You never know who's going to be, but there are some people who are just like, oh, you poor fuck, you boring fuck. I know you just want a better life, but oh man, this is just so. it's gotten where you were getting into it, it was really getting rough. So I'm just telling you, you got into a grapes of wrath situation.
Yeah,
Anyway,
for real,
yeah,
I think Grapes of Wrath is a good analogy because initially, when you have the first batch of people, like life is okay, like it's okay, like it's rough, but like there's not that many of us. But then when everybody starts moving west to pick those grapes, now like there's no more grapes for people to pick, and wages are getting low. Nobody can get any mic time. Like nobody can find an audience, and it's just bad. It's just 200 people competing for 3 minutes, and it's not any good. Now, I started in Utah, so it actually was like all right. It was pretty decent. It wasn't like here in LA, because if you start in another state, like it's not so much competition, it's not so saturated. So I
right.
remember there would be like 20 comics at an open mic in Utah, and we would get our like 2 minutes. It wasn't that long. It was their 2 minutes, but like you'd get 2 minutes in front of a real audience of like 100, 150, 200 people. And like, so like I remember starting out and like my jokes weren't even that good, but like there were just all these people who were so excited and happy to laugh. And I remember I loved it. I loved it so much. And then like when I finally got around to LA and I saw like what a difference it was, I was like, oh
Oh
man.
yeah, you that is the grapes of wrath analogy, brother. That is except in the Dust Bowl, things weren't good in Utah. Things were probably better in Utah. You know what I mean? You didn't think it could be so much worse in. I'm imagining in your imagination in LA, it would have been like, oh, I'm gonna be in LA, and then you, oh fuck, everybody else came here, you know?
I thought like this is the promised land. This is like the land of milk and honey. I'm gonna go kill it in LA. And then you get here and it's just like terrible, man. I remember the first mic I went to was Marty's open mic, and it's like, hey guys, I just came back to LA for the first time. So excited to do comedy. This is my first night. I straight up remember a guy, like a comic on his phone. He was like, I don't give a fuck. Like that's what he told me. I was like, what? Like, come on, like where's the welcoming? And then I remember just like there just wasn't a warm welcome. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, where am I? Like I hope the other mics aren't like this. But then like I went to other mics and other mics were super cool. Like I
What
remember
were the mics? What were the mics that were cool? List off some of the mics. Not they might not even be there anymore, but just for anyone who's in comedy or maybe in comedy in some other place who's thinking of coming to LA, who might want to come to a good mic
yeah.
in the event that those ever get up again. Just give me a quick list of the ones that you found friendly.
Okay, so West Side Comedy Theater was pretty good. Like they would have a pretty decent audience there on Saturdays of like the public, and you could get some good laughs there and feel pretty good if you could get up early. That was a great spot. I also like Flappers. Flappers was pretty cool. Like I remember people there would laugh really easily. They'd always have new people there, so you always felt good. Like you felt like, oh, I could do this comedy thing. There's also this really good spot called the Poetry Lounge, where you have 200 poets, and they're not expecting to hear you tell jokes. They're expecting to hear you tell poetry. So you get up there and you say jokes, like you're gonna hear like a ton of raucous laughter from like 200 poets who weren't expecting it.
It's at
That's
the Greenway Court Theater on Fairfax.
yeah, that's right.
Right. That's been
The
around
Irish Times
forever.
pretty good. In
Oh,
Palms,
where else? Where else? Go
the
ahead.
Irish Times Bar has a pretty good bar
Irish
audience.
Times Bar. You know, try to put yourself in this situation real quick, but I want to get into your story. But imagine being a veteran professional comedian, still having to use those open mics from time to time. Imagine the misery of having to prepare for a tour by going to open mics to do time and be in that environment with all of these new comics, and they're looking at you like you're one of them.
Yeah.
Imagine what a horrible fucking horrible. I still see and communicate with comics sometimes who I met in these places, and they still think I'm an amateur comic like they are. You know, I would say really I would caution a veteran comic, if you need an open mic, you might be better off just going and screaming from your balcony, or doing what Terrence Rutledge did and going in public and just screaming out, or Venice Beach or something. Because
I've done that before.
oh, that's awesome.
I remember because I was inspired by do you know the street comedians who used to be out on the beach?
Michael Collier, actually,
Collier.
who became very successful, you know, doing
You
that.
made millions of dollars starting out on the beach. There was a chainsaw juggler, Robert Gruenford. He made even more millions of dollars.
Dude, if I could juggle chainsaws, I would have never had to tell a joke ever in my life. If I could juggle chainsaws, that would be it. I wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like, now again, you could have a situation like you had with your hands where you lose a hand juggling chainsaws, and then you have to get into telling jokes because you know what I mean? The chainsaw juggling didn't work out too well. But I want to go into, so when I met you at the synagogue and you're in the wheelchair, let's get into this here. What happened to you? Because I don't know the whole story. We talked a little bit about it, but I don't know what all went down. So break into it, brother.
So much went down, man, because I came here to LA, back home to my hometown to do comedy. I was standing just fine. And I remember at one point, I was even going to the gym. I was lifting weights. I was getting big and strong at one point. I was still doing comedy. And then I remember I was lifting weights, and then I lifted weights that were too heavy, and my elbow joint snapped. And then my arms got all shriveled up and skinny again. But then also I noticed I was working at Universal Studios, and they had me doing double shifts where I was standing on my feet all day long, like 12, 16 hours, and then just going home, sleeping for 4 hours, coming back. It was really intense. I only did it for like 4 days, but I remember my feet were hurting so bad. And then I don't know if that started it, because there have been some points in the past when my feet had been hurting, and during my mission, because I used to walk on my feet all day long for 2 years as a Mormon missionary in Arizona. But I remember it was in 2016. I first started noticing that my feet were hurting, and I couldn't get out of bed for like 2 weeks or a month. And then I was walking again. But as the year progressed from 2016 to 2017, I noticed that my feet, my body felt heavier. It just felt like my body just couldn't go very far. And I remember I walked, it was in the summer of 2017. It was around May or June. I was walking with my friend Jake, and we were walking on Venice Beach to Santa Monica Pier and back. And so that was a distance of 4 miles there, 4 miles back. And I remember just my feet felt so heavy. I just couldn't walk. I just felt like I needed to sit down. And then over that summer, it was a rapid deterioration where I went from that 8-mile walk down to 4-mile walks, down to 2-mile walks, where I could walk across campus from class to class, because I was at SMC at one point in 2017 that year. And then eventually I got to the point where it's like, oh, I can only walk 1 mile. I don't think I can make it to my classes. I don't think I can make it from like my Portuguese class to my Hebrew class, because I like taking lots of different classes, different languages for fun. And I remember thinking to myself, I can't make it from class to class. I don't think I can walk up these stairs. I feel like I need to start crawling. I can't start crawling across the ground, across the campus. That'll look weird. People won't understand that. I think I need to get a wheelchair. I need to get a mobility scooter. How is this happening? I'm only 24 years old. I don't understand. And I remember I got a mobility scooter, and I was I was in a mobility scooter now, and it was just so confusing to me. I was still going to class, but I remember I was like running into things because I was still getting adjusted to it, and it was so frustrating. You know, at a certain point, I was like crawling on the ground. I really needed the mobility scooter to get anywhere. I could not even like walk from one room to another. That's how limited I was at one point back in 2017. And I needed that mobility scooter. And I remember just like sitting on the bus of my mobility scooter crying, like, how could this happen to me? I'm not an old man. This shouldn't even happen to old people, but how has it happened to me? I'm only 24 years old. And I remember just like, it was just so terrible. And I remember there were even people who didn't believe me. There were people making comments like, how is that young guy? He's like a kid in a wheelchair. That doesn't look right. I bet he's lying. You know, there were people coming up to me saying like, you know, it's appalling. How could you pretend to be disabled when there are actually people who are paralyzed, who have cerebral palsy? There were people who didn't understand that there's all different kinds of disability. They're not all the same ones. And like, I really was going through this.
Did you get diagnosed? Because I remember when I saw you at the synagogue, I said, what happened? Did you go to a doctor? You had not gone at that time to a doctor. You didn't know what was happening to you. And so I'm wondering if you did get some diagnosis after that.
No, I never got a diagnosis. I went to 10 different doctors at least. They did many different kinds of tests on my blood and my bones. I remember the worst one was when they electrocuted me. to like test my nerves, and they never found anything from any of their tests. None of the different doctors, any of the general doctors or any of the specialists, anywhere I went, were able to discover what I had. And one by one, they all just gave up on me. None of them wanted to deal with it. And I just eventually stopped worrying about the doctors. I would go because people would tell me to, but the doctors were never helpful. They were never able to diagnose me or give me any treatment. And so I was just disabled for a long time. For like it's been almost 3 years now. Yeah.
Okay, so you were disabled. You were disabled. Okay, so
I'm
it's
still
3 years,
partially disabled.
right? But suddenly you can walk again.
Yeah. Well, not suddenly, because I was able to walk a little bit. After years of recovery, I was able to do little things like walk from room to room. I remember when I moved in with my girlfriend a year ago, I tried walking a year ago. And I remember walking one block and I remember hurting so bad that I just had to sit down until my girlfriend came to get me and we got an Uber home. I couldn't walk any further. And then it was only recently that like I was able to walk any further besides just room to room. And I was like, you know what? I feel like my feet feel better enough. I'm going to go outside with my neighbor and I'm going to try walking. It was this past week. I tried walking, and me and my neighbor, Lori, we went on a 2-mile walk down to the beach. And then on Saturday, just a few days ago, we walked a 4-mile walk. But then yesterday, or not yesterday, but this past Sunday, few days ago, I walked 1 mile, and then my feet were starting to hurt again. I think that was just too much for my first week back walking. 2 and then 4 and then another
Yeah,
1.
you overdid it, dude.
Yeah, I overdid it. So I'm resting again. But I feel like my feet have healed somewhat, definitely. Like I'm no longer stuck in this stage where I just gotta crawl from place to place. Like I'm able to walk from room to room reliably. And with enough rest, I should be able to walk like a few miles. So like that is huge progress. I didn't know if that it was ever gonna happen.
Maybe
Yeah.
some physical therapy, like some physical therapy would be good.
Perhaps,
I
yeah.
mean, walking could just be the physical therapy you need, but
I have resistance bands. I do resistance bands exercises.
okay. So, I mean, dude, I mean, you make it sound like you just needed a rest. It's
Yeah,
funny.
I needed a
You make it
long
sound like I was just, but at 24, you don't need a rest like that. Like at 24 years old, a person doesn't need, doesn't need a wheelchair for 3 years to rest. So there's, and doctors not being able to diagnose you and having gone through all these tests. I mean, there's something going on here, man. There's something unseen going on,
yeah.
and miraculous about the recovery of. I do want to show you something really quick because I know I told you this, but I have here. Bear with me 1 second. Hold on, Terrence. I have here, and it becomes kind of rote. It becomes kind of like a routine thing for me because I do pray.
Yeah.
I don't feel things or see things or whatever, but I've been through my own bizarre things in my life. I've seen some things and been through some weird stuff. So I do pray to one God, right? And I have your name, if I can.
On a prayer
Terrence,
list.
that's my prayer list. It's kind of backwards but you're on there. That's the most horrible handwriting. It looks like satanic scribble from an Exorcist movie, turned backwards like that. But you've been on my prayer list for a miracle of healing, and there's a lot of people on this list, by the way. But you've been on this list for probably like the past 2 years, and not that is a whole huge thing, but I just want you to know that I believe that there are things we can't see and that the human intention of wanting to heal them, because nobody can explain what happened to you. None of science can't explain what happened to you. And so, I mean, there's got to be something other than that, I believe, that was in play there. I mean, maybe it was for the glory of the creator or the universe or whatever. Maybe it was just so that you'll be grateful for the rest of your life. Um, I've been thinking about it, and that's why I wanted to ask you. My opinion is, I think it's so you'll be in gratitude for the rest of your life. Not that you weren't a grateful person before, but so you'll remember because I got hit by a car basically. I got like almost killed, metaphorically speaking, hit by a car. I could have died at the end of 2017. When did your thing happen?
It first started back in 2017.
Okay, so it was the end of 2017 that I was almost killed. I could have died. I still don't know what saved me, and there have been other things as well. So when I think about these things, I'm like, I could easily not be in gratitude. But when I think about the fact that I'm here, that I have my mobility, that I really my life wasn't changed that much. I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, I have no idea why it happened, how it happens, what it all means. I just know that it happened, and it did make me more grateful for my life, and it eventually did lead to good things. And also, I learned a lot of life lessons out of it, and like it's been like it's a difficult experience, but it makes my life story more interesting. Like I'm an underdog who's coming up on life, and it does make me feel more grateful, like I can appreciate things more. And I don't really know why it happens, how it happened, or what it all means. I'm happy that I'm recovering. I'm happy that my life is much better.
Yeah.
It's good.
Isn't it funny though that you're able to walk again and there's no stand up? You were able to stand up again and there's no stand up. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of ironic, right? I mean,
That is ironic.
that you might be able to work that in somewhere when the shit starts opening up again. Um,
Hmm.
Also, you're from Santa Monica, or you're from the west side of LA, and you went to Florida. I know this because I remember you when we spoke on the phone. I was surprised to find out that you had moved to or were visiting. How long were you there?
I was there for 2 months.
Okay. Why? Why did you? I mean, most people from paradise don't go to a place where the only culture is the bacteria in the water.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what?
I went there because I was running low on money. I remember I was on the street at the time, and I heard about a job opportunity in sales, so I went out there.
So how did that work? Because you traveled all over Florida, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah. I was in Miami, Tampa, Jacksonville.
Dude, I lived in Florida for 10 years of my life. I mean, when you told me you were in Florida, I was like, dude, don't make this. I didn't say this to you, but I may have said it to you, but I was thinking, man, this guy's can't walk anymore. He's making things worse on himself by going down there. I hope he's all right. But I would see posts from you on social media, and you would be like, you'd have these adventures. It seemed like you were having adventures and meeting all kinds of wild. You were on a folk journey or something.
Yeah, yeah. That's how I survived it. The way I survived the entire disability homeless journey was I made the most of it by like making videos and going on adventures. And I just told myself it was all a game. You know, I like how during the Holocaust there was a dad who told his son, "This is all a game. This isn't real." That's kind of what I did with myself. I remember I went on an adventure to Tijuana to see the Honduras caravan. And that was an adventure. You know, I was focusing all my thoughts on them and making a video talking about how these are great people just coming in search of a better life. And I remember the night before I went to the Honduras caravan, I was disabled in my scooter and I slept on the sidewalk that night. And then I got on the train and I went to downtown LA and got a Greyhound down to the border. And so I was doing all these adventures while I was sleeping on the street and while I was in my wheelchair. I remember I made some of my best content, some of my older videos and sketches and jokes and videos while I was both disabled and homeless. So that's how I survived the whole thing, was just by making a big game out of it.
Wow, cool. Where else did you travel to?
So I went down to San Diego. I went down to the border. I went around to many different parts of LA County. I went to all over Florida. I went to Ohio. But besides those places, mainly just here in LA.
Oh, okay. Well, you went to quite a few different places, brother. I mean, I didn't realize you had been to all those places. I thought it was just Florida,
I
but that's
lost. I
very.
can't hear you.
Oh, hello, hello.
Hello? Yeah,
Can you
you're
hear me
back.
now? Can you hear
Yes.
me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. You went to a lot of different places, is all I was saying, and you had all these adventures, and I didn't realize you had been to all those places. I thought it was just down to the southeast. So that's very interesting and cool. And yeah, man, I just think it's amazing that you were walking again. If anything, it's like a little tap on the shoulder to me to keep my prayer list close by and not to be too not to be too callous about the reading the names off that, because maybe it really does help, you know. But man, I'll tell you what, brother, it made my day to hear that you're walking again, and I can't wait to see you at the show, standing up. And oh, this is the one other thing I thought to tell you. It would be a great if you had created this as a practical joke. It would be a sick fucking thing, but it
Like
would
Andy.
be on the level of Andy Kaufman. If you had if you had done this as a practical joke, because Andy Kaufman did nothing on that scale, but he would do. I don't know if you know the shit Andy Kaufman would do.
You would be a
Um,
waiter at Kevin's Deli, and they would be like, "Hey, that's Andy Kaufman." And you'd be like, "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not Andy Kaufman. I'm a waiter."
oh yeah, that I sort of remember. But he would do other things, like he would go on stage with a sleeping bag and an alarm clock at the Comedy Store, and he would set the alarm clock for 20 minutes, and he would get into the sleeping bag, and he would go to sleep for
Yeah,
20 minutes, and the
yeah.
audience would be sitting there looking at him, and the fucking alarm clock would go off, and he would get up, and he would get the alarm clock and unplug it and take the sleeping bag and leave, and that was his set. So he would do shit. uh, I mean, this is, even though you didn't do this as a practical joke, it's really, and it really happened. It is your sense of humor. It is your sense of humor to do things like this. So maybe God was just like, I got Terrence Rutledge here. I'm gonna have a little practical joke on him with this wheelchair thing for a couple of years and just see how he takes it. He'll be fine because he'll play it all like it's a game.
Yeah, yeah. That is interesting. That would be really fun to find out someday.
Yeah. Anyway, all right, man. Well, on that note, tell this No Ideas Zone audience where we can find you on social media. Give us all your social media platforms now.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter under Blog Wheels.
Blog Wheels, everywhere on Blog Wheels.
Yeah,
Terrence Rutledge.
BLOGWHEELS. And I usually post something every day on just like my Facebook account, just Terrence Rutledge.
Follow Terrence. Follow his daily musings and wisdoms and quirks. And Terrence, is there anything you're working on now that you want to share with everybody?
Oh, well, I'm always working on something. I'm always doing something new. I'm always writing every day about things that I'm interested in, whether it's serious or whether it's funny. I got a whole bunch of projects going on that I'm excited about. When my gas masks arrive in August, I'm going to be placing myself as a human shield between people's apartments and the cops who are trying to evict them. And I will not allow cops to evict anyone during COVID. It's been going on right now, illegal evictions here in LA, and I'm going to make sure that I'm there to make sure it doesn't happen. So that's one project I'm interested in.
Oh, I'm
Uh,
I'm down to help to be there with you, brother.
you're going to be there with me?
I will be there with you for that. Yes.
Awesome.
All
Yeah,
right. You let me know when you're doing that because I am totally down for that. And we'll get some of it on video.
definitely. So I'm going to be doing that. I'm super excited about that. As soon as my masks arrive, I ordered 4 gas masks. So I have one for me, my girlfriend, and you as well if you don't have one, because the
I
cops.
don't have one. I don't have one. No.
Awesome. So we got one for you. because the cops do use tear gas. When you prevent them from making an eviction, they use tear gas to make everybody disperse. So we got a mask for you. That's a big project I'm excited about. I'm also being very introspective. I'm unpacking all of the life experiences I've ever had, all of my emotions, both happy and sad. And I'm talking about everything every day. And some of it's like really joyful and exciting and inspiring. Other stuff is really sad. And some people have thought like, oh no, is Terrence depressed? But actually not. It's actually me being healthier emotionally than I've ever been, to be able to just talk about everything and just lay it all out there. It feels very therapeutic to release everything out into the world. So I've just been writing about my life every day. I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to keep revealing more of my secrets and more of my life and things that I've been through, and things that I'm planning on doing and things that I'm doing. One topic that I'm interested in exploring more is like my journey into the Mormon church and now my journey out of it. I'm leaving the Mormon church. I sent in a letter 3 months ago to formally leave, but they never got back to me. So,
that's so funny. They're like customer service is down. We're not. They're like in denial.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's so funny.
It really is. Like, this is like, it's crazy. At any other time, I could have sent that letter and the request would have been processed and I would have been out already. But it's during COVID, so there's nobody there to process my request to like help me to leave this church. So I'm stuck in the Mormon church for I don't know how long. Hopefully, like, they can get that letter that I sent them.
You know what? You might need to ask for a manager.
Yeah, I need to ask for a manager.
All right, brother. Well, this has been great, and thank you so much for joining me, my friend. And God bless you. I'm so happy you're doing well, and looking forward to blocking illegal evictions with you.
Yes.
Or any other way to fight the power in that way. Yeah, there's not enough of that. So, amen, my friend, and we'll see you on here in a couple weeks. Everyone will get to see you.
Definitely. So good talking to you, Stephen.
You too, my friend. Talk to you soon. Don't be a stranger. Hey, everybody, check out Terrence Rutledge all across social media, and we'll see you next week on the No Idea Zone.
Awesome.
Peace.